on the same subject, Turkish authorities have been talking about a new wave of Syrian refugees because of the Russian strikes. Do you happen to talk to Russian counterparts about their increased attacks in northern Syria, which has been reported as killing many of the civilians as well?
Of course we have talked to our Russian counterparts about their continued military activity in Syria and the degree to which it's contributing to a lack of humanitarian assistance getting where it needs to get to. An increase in what we have seen are credible reports or reports from credible organizations about civilian casualties and damage to civilian infrastructure. And three, as I said, I think it was Friday, an increase in the displacement of civilians. And we know that there's the estimates go from just more than 10,000 to much greater than that just in and around Aleppo of displacements, which will obviously have an effect on the refugee flow out of Syria and then at the very least to the border. So yes, we're concerned about this. We've talked about it publicly. I've talked about it here from this podium, and we have certainly mentioned it in our conversations with Russian authorities.
It seems like there are tens of thousands of refugees right now waiting at the Turkish border. Again, from Turkey over the weekend, remarks came from Ankara saying that could be 500,000 more Syrians may escape. So this is apparently a very imminent situation. The question is there anything else the U.S. can do to convince Russians to stop these strikes in the northern Syria?
We have talked a lot about this with them, and you heard the Secretary address this very issue on Friday. And that's why he believes this upcoming meeting in Munich is important on Thursday to deal with this exact issue. And he's been very clear that Russian support for the Assad regime is doing nothing but prolonging the conflict, helping attract jihadis and foreign fighters to the effort, because in resistance to the support to the Assad regime, obviously it's increasing the flow of refugees, and it's harming innocent people who are not involved in the struggle one way or the other. So yeah, we continue to bring this up, and we will continue to bring this up. It is opposite. It's absolutely contrary to what the Russians have signed up to in both Vienna communiques and UN Security Council Resolution 2254. So we've made that plain and clear to them, and I suspect you'll continue to see the Secretary do that. And I think it'll be certainly be a topic of discussion on Thursday in Munich.
But it seems on the ground that opposite the U.S. arguments, Russians supported Syrian regime forces and Hezbollah are making gains. Why should the Russians change tactics if they see they are winning on the ground?
Our argument is they should stop doing this because in bolstering the Assad regime, they are doing nothing but prolonging the conflict and making it much harder for us to get to any political resolution or transition of any kind. It was, in part, as I said last week, because of Russian military support to regime forces on the ground in and around Aleppo, that the talks in Geneva weren't able to go forward. And the special envoy had to pause them. So the argument to the Russians are, A, you made a commitment that you would support a ceasefire and humanitarian access, so you got to live up to your commitments. They didn't just make them verbally, they made them in writing. Number two, further support of the Assad regime and bolstering him and empowering him is just prolonging the conflict in Syria and making it that much harder, not just for the Syrian people, obviously, but for neighboring nations like Turkey, which is already dealing with an immense refugee problem on their side of the border and security issues of their own along that border, which we recognize. So the arguments are all there in the plain for the Russians to do the right thing. Now, why they haven't done the right thing, you'd have to ask them. But they made commitments. We expect them to meet their commitments. Again, the Secretary was very, very strong on that last week when he talked publicly, and I can tell you he's equally as strong when he talks privately with Russian leaders. Yeah.
On Syria too,